Why is it that when your wedding looks perfect from the outside, soft lighting, heartfelt vows, applause at all the right moments, you're standing there smiling, yet only you know that what guided your decision was steadiness, compatibility, reassurance, not that unmistakable feeling of being deeply in love? Why is it that you're not confused about love, not naive, often more self-aware than most, and still, at some point, you find yourself thinking, maybe marriage isn't supposed to be about feelings, maybe stability matters more than passion? And why is it that when everyone around you says you've finally settled down, made a mature choice, put your life on track, you sometimes catch yourself in a quiet moment wondering, am I moving toward love or simply moving away from loneliness? If these questions have mostly stayed unspoken, then today isn't about romantic fantasy, and it isn't about moral judgment. What we're exploring is something quieter, but psychologically significant. What happens inside you when you enter marriage without a deep emotional connection? And what invisible pressures can guide you toward good enough relationships, along with the emotional costs they often carry? You probably didn't reject love entirely. At some point, though, suitable simply started sounding more reliable than exciting. Maybe friends began marrying, family conversations shifted subtly, or you just felt time moving forward, quietly but persistently. Then someone stable appears, responsible, kind, emotionally calm, with a clear life direction, and you start considering the relationship seriously. You tell yourself, passion fades anyway. Long-term life requires consistency. Psychology describes this as risk minimization decision-making. When uncertainty rises, the brain often prefers predictability and control. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Stability does matter. But sometimes rational evaluation quietly overrides emotional signals. You rarely argue, yet rarely feel deeply excited. Things flow smoothly, but the instinctive pull toward closeness is weaker than expected. From the outside, this often looks like maturity. But your body sometimes registers something else. Calm isn't always the same as emotional investment. Stability itself isn't the illusion. The illusion begins when you start believing that compatibility alone will eventually generate love. And while some relationships endure this way, longevity doesn't always equal emotional ignition. Some partnerships last for years without ever truly coming alive. Often, you aren't deeply drawn to a particular person. You're responding to something quieter and heavier, a kind of background pressure. Psychology refers to it as fear of long-term singlehood. It doesn't always show up as panic. More often, it feels like a ticking clock you barely notice. Family gatherings where someone asks, "Anyone special yet?" Colleagues talking about mortgages and children, social media filled with engagements and anniversaries. Gradually, your internal question shifts. Instead of asking, "Do I feel deeply connected to this person?" you begin asking, "Is this choice safe enough?" Your criteria adjust subtly. Steady income matters more. Clear plans matter more. Willingness to commit matters more. Research shows that when loneliness feels imminent, the brain prioritizes avoiding loss over pursuing genuine fulfillment. It's a survival instinct, especially if you grew up in emotional unpredictability, conflict, inconsistency, neglect. Stability doesn't just feel attractive, it feels like relief. So the relationship becomes more than connection, it becomes protection. You tell yourself, "At least I won't be alone." But when fear becomes the starting point, you often don't choose the person who fits you best. You choose the one who reduces anxiety most efficiently. And intimacy built on fear rarely creates deep calm, it creates containment. You may not lack the desire for love, but your understanding of what love feels like was shaped long before adulthood. Psychologists call this attachment patterns, an emotional blueprint formed in early relationships. It teaches your nervous system what closeness means, what love costs, and how much of yourself you must give to keep it. If you grew up in instability, intensity may feel like chemistry, anxiety may feel like passion, uncertainty may feel like connection. Then, when you meet someone calm and steady, your mind says, "This is healthy." But your body quietly responds, "It feels flat." Some people move toward chaotic passion, others move in the opposite direction, choosing someone they don't truly love because a mild, predictable bond feels less dangerous. For an anxious attachment style, stability means they won't leave. For an avoidant style, less emotional depth means less vulnerability. You may believe you're making a rational decision, but often it's familiarity choosing for you. And familiarity isn't always health. Sometimes you don't fail to love. You simply misidentify what love feels like. After the wedding ends, the photos are posted, and life settles into routine. That's when the real psychological work begins. If a marriage lacks genuine emotional connection, your mind often enters a subtle tension known as cognitive dissonance. On one hand, you tell yourself, "I chose this. This is stability. This is adulthood." On the other, your body registers absence, a quiet sense that something essential isn't there. To reduce that tension, you begin explaining things away. Passion fades anyway. Romance is unrealistic. Responsibility is what love really means. These explanations can work for a while, but the nervous system rarely follows logic indefinitely. Gradually, you may notice yourself becoming quieter. Touch feels procedural. Intimacy feels scheduled. Conversations revolve around logistics, bills, errands, responsibilities. There's no dramatic conflict, but there's also no emotional warmth. The more hidden shift is internal. You start shrinking. You stop sharing strange ideas, unpolished dreams, or deeper fears. Not necessarily because your partner is unkind, but because the relationship no longer feels like a place that can hold them. Long-term emotional deprivation pushes the nervous system into adaptation. Some people become chronically anxious, irritable, hyper-alert. Others grow calm in a different way, a calm that borders on numbness. From the outside, life looks normal. Inside, color fades slowly. You haven't failed. Your body is simply signaling something fundamental. Human beings need emotional connection, and when it's missing for too long, silence becomes the price. By now, you may be asking yourself a more honest question. Is this relationship nourishing you or slowly draining you? Not every low-passion marriage must end. Some relationships can grow again, starting not from romance, but from friendship. If respect remains, if kindness still exists, if both people are willing to listen, connection can be relearned. But that process begins with honesty. Honesty with your partner and honesty with yourself. Because if the relationship has become persistently cold, if you find yourself shrinking, silencing, disappearing, staying isn't always maturity. Sometimes leaving isn't failure. Sometimes it's simply recognizing that you need authenticity, not just stability. Psychology doesn't decide for you. It only reminds you. The nervous system can adapt to emotional scarcity, but adaptation isn't fulfillment. You can stay and rebuild connection. You can leave and rebuild yourself. What matters most is whether you remain whole. Marriage isn't the answer. Security isn't the destination. At a deeper level, what humans need is simple: to be seen, to be understood, to be responded to. If a relationship allows you to exist fully, that's connection. If you must hide yourself to keep it, that's survival. And your life was never meant to be only survival. This is Felix. May you understand yourself a little more deeply and treat the person you're becoming with patience and kindness. See you next time.